Every character in The Boys is hiding something, not small things either. We're talking buried childhoods, faked deaths, secret identities, and lies so deep they've rewritten entire lives. Some of these secrets break the people keeping them, others break everyone around them. Today we're pulling back the curtain on 6 of the biggest, starting with the most powerful, Soupy alive in the sterile underground lab where his story really begins. Homelander. Every billboard, every staged rescue where Ashley Barrett is literally telling the camera crew to get the shot of him saving the day, all of it is a lie. The patriotic smile, the American flag cape, the whole only man in the sky persona. Fabricated, top to bottom. Because the guy the entire world worships as their protector was never raised by a family. He was raised in a cage. Homelander was created through Vaught's Compound V program and spent his entire childhood in a sterile underground laboratory. No parents, no bedtime stories, no birthday parties, just scientists, security guards, and cameras. Every moment of his early life was observed and filed away like he was a lab rat that happened to have the power to level a city block. Warmth was replaced with fluorescent lighting, and Vought saw nothing wrong with this because they weren't raising a child. They were building a weapon. Here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. In the Season 4 episode Wisdom of the Ages, Homelander returns to the lab where he grew up. He walks through the corridors past the rooms where he was tested, and he finds something that stops him cold. His childhood blanket, the one object in that entire facility that gave him any comfort as a kid, locked behind glass, cataloged and preserved like experimental data. Not kept because it mattered to him, kept because it mattered to the study. The most powerful man on the planet completely unravels at the sight of a piece of cloth, because that blanket is the only evidence he was ever a child at all, triggering an eruption of rage that makes it very clear this wound never healed. It was never even acknowledged, and that's the thing nobody talks about. His narcissism, his sadism, his pathological need for the public to love him, none of it is random. It's a direct consequence of growing up in a place where nobody touched him unless they were running a test. Every time he stands on a rooftop soaking in applause, he's trying to fill a hole that was carved into him before he could walk. He's not evil because he's powerful. He's broken because he was never treated like a human being, and then he was handed the power of a god. But the real tragedy is watching what happens when he tries to be a father. His relationship with Ryan is the clearest proof that Vought didn't just create a weapon. They created a person fundamentally incapable of sustaining love without corrupting it. Homelander looks at Ryan and sees everything he never had. A kid who was raised by a mother who actually cared about him. A kid who knows what warmth feels like. And he wants that. Desperately, but he can't hold it. Every attempt at connection slides into control. Every moment of tenderness curdles into coercion. He doesn't know how to love without possessing because nobody ever modeled love for him that wasn't transactional. He oscillates between I want you to choose me and you will choose me. And the gap between those two sentences is the entire distance between a father and a tyrant. Ryan isn't a son to him. Ryan is a second chance at receiving unconditional love, and Homelander will burn everything down before he lets that chance slip away. Vought built the most dangerous being on the planet and gave him the emotional foundation of an abandoned child, which is, not ideal, but if Homelander's damage comes from what was done to him, the next person on this list chose his damage, and it's eating him alive. Butcher. Butcher's entire war against Soups, every punch thrown, every scheme hatched, every bridge burned, all of it was built on a single story told to him by one man. Jonah Vogelbaum, the scientist responsible for creating Homelander, sat Butcher down and told him that Becca's baby lived all of 10 seconds, drowned in its mother's blood. That's the sentence that turned Billy Butcher into the person we meet in Season 1. A man with nothing left to lose and a grudge the size of a continent. Here's the thing, it was a lie. The Season 1 finale pulls the rug out from under everything. Becca survived. The baby survived. Vought had been keeping both of them in a hidden facility designed to look like a quiet suburban neighborhood, complete with manicured lawns and the illusion of normalcy, while making sure neither of them could ever leave. Butcher spent years fueled by grief over a death that never happened, and the corporation responsible for his wife's assault was also the one hiding her from him. The child, Ryan, is everything Butcher didn't want him to be. He's sweet, he loves his mom, he has zero idea that his entire existence is a corporate containment project or that his biological father is the most dangerous Soupy on the planet. His innocence stands in brutal contrast to literally everything surrounding him, the rape that led to his conception, the facility built to cage him, and the man who spent years wishing he'd never been born. But the real gut punch comes in Season 2. During the fight against Stormfront, Ryan loses control of his heat vision trying to protect his mother. The beam that tears through Stormfront also hits Becca, fatally. A child trying to save his mom accidentally kills her with powers he can't control. A boy who loves his mother more than anything becomes the reason she dies. And there's nobody to blame because he was trying to do the right thing. In her final moments, Becca doesn't scream, she doesn't curse. She looks at Butcher and asks him to protect Ryan. Let that sit for a second. The woman Butcher loved more than anything uses her last breath to hand him the one responsibility he is least equipped to handle. Take care of this soupy child, this son of Homelander. The kid Butcher once saw as a living reminder of the worst thing that ever happened to his wife is now the most precious thing she left behind. And Butcher, standing there covered in blood and grief, has to decide whether he's the man Becca believed he could be, or the man he's been for the last 8 years. That's the real secret. It's not that Becca was alive, it's not that Ryan exists. It's that Butcher's entire identity, built on hatred and loss, gets dismantled into something far harder. Reluctant guardianship. His secret evolves from "my wife is dead" to "I promised a dying woman I'd raise the son of the man I want to kill." And Vogelbaum's lie didn't just waste years of Butcher's life. It denied him years with Becca. Years where she was alive, raising Ryan alone in a corporate prison, waiting for someone to find her. Butcher could have been there. He wasn't. Because one scientist decided it was easier to tell him everyone was dead. Butcher built his whole personality on a foundation of grief that turned out to be manufactured, and then the real grief showed up, and it was somehow worse, because this time he couldn't just be angry. He had to be something he'd never been before. A father to a kid with laser eyes and the DNA of his worst enemy. Cool. Add that to the list, but if Butcher's secret is about a promise made in blood, the next one is about something just as painful, an identity stolen and sold back to its owner for profit. Maeve. Here's the thing about Queen Maeve's secret. It's not that she's queer. Everybody finds that out. The secret is that even after the whole world knows, her actual identity is still buried under a corporate rebrand so thick that the truth never reaches the surface. Maeve is bisexual. That's canon. She had a significant relationship with a woman named Elena, and she's shown throughout the series seeking out encounters with both men and women. Her attraction isn't complicated. She likes who she likes, and that includes people across the entire gender spectrum. Pretty straightforward stuff, but Vought doesn't do straightforward. Vought does marketable. When Maeve gets outed in Season 2, any normal person would expect the fallout to be messy, painful, maybe eventually liberating. Instead, Vaught's PR machine kicks into gear faster than you can blink, and suddenly, her sexuality isn't a personal revelation anymore, it's a product launch. The company immediately rebrands her as a lesbian, not bisexual. Lesbian. Because lesbian is a cleaner label. It fits on a poster, it slots into a demographic. Bisexual is apparently too many syllables for the marketing department, and this is where the real cruelty kicks in. Maeve is publicly celebrated for being queer. She's the face of representation, she's on merchandise, she's the centerpiece of Vaught's Girls Get It Done campaign. On the surface, it looks like a win. Pride flags everywhere, corporate allyship at its finest. But here's where it gets dark. The version of Maeve that Vought is celebrating doesn't actually exist. They've taken a bisexual woman, shaved off half of who she is, and replaced it with a simpler identity that tests better with focus groups. Her relationships with men, gone from the narrative. Her actual lived experience, irrelevant. What matters is the version of her that sells rainbow-branded protein bars. This mirrors real-world bisexual erasure so precisely it almost hurts. You're either actually gay or actually straight, depending on who you're currently dating, and nobody wants to deal with the reality that attraction doesn't work like a light switch. Maeve's situation is that exact problem, except scaled up to a billion-dollar corporation with a media empire behind it. She can't even correct the record because Vought controls every public-facing word that comes out of her mouth. Maeve tries to cope by doing what she always does, which is numbing herself. She throws herself into hookups with men, partly because she's attracted to them, partly because it's the one space where her actual bisexuality can exist without being filtered through a corporate press release. But none of that makes it into the Vought narrative. To the public, those encounters don't happen. She's brave lesbian Maeve, the sanitized mascot of a movement she didn't ask to lead. The Girls Get It Done campaign is the cherry on top of this particular garbage sundae. Vought takes a deeply personal aspect of Maeve's identity, something that cost her a relationship she cared about, and folds it into a hashtag. Her queerness becomes a slogan. Her pain becomes a brand pillar. And the worst part? It works. The public eats it up. Nobody questions whether Maeve is actually being represented or just being used because the marketing is that good. What makes this genuinely tragic is that Maeve's queerness could have been a source of actual pride. If she'd been allowed to come out on her own terms and be publicly bisexual without corporate interference, it might have been empowering. Instead, the mechanism that's supposed to celebrate her becomes another form of control. Vought doesn't care who Maeve sleeps with, they care about what her sleeping habits can sell. The moment her sexuality became public knowledge, it stopped belonging to her. So the secret isn't hidden in some vault or buried in classified files. It's hiding in plain sight. Everyone thinks they know who Maeve is. They've seen the campaigns, bought the merch, watched the interviews, and every single piece of it is a carefully constructed lie that happens to contain a grain of truth, which is somehow worse than if they'd just made the whole thing up. At least Maeve's secret is about who she loves. The next one is about what someone is willing to destroy to stay on top. A train. A train is basically a superpowered Lance Armstrong, except instead of cycling trophies, the thing he's trying to keep is his spot on the most powerful superhero team on the planet. And instead of blood doping, he's injecting himself with a serum that was literally designed for children. Here's the thing about Compound V, it was engineered to be administered to babies, where it mutates their biology and grants them powers. It was never meant to be a performance booster for a fully grown adult who's terrified of losing his job. But that's exactly what A-Train uses it for, over and over again, because the alternative is becoming irrelevant. He replaced Mr. Marathon on the 7, and he knows better than anyone how quickly Vought will swap you out for a newer model. He did the swapping, he is the newer model. So the idea that someone faster could come along and do to him what he did to Marathon, that fear eats him alive. And the Compound Vi works, it keeps him fast, it keeps him relevant. It also kills Huey's girlfriend. Robin gets obliterated when A-Train runs through her at full speed while juiced up on V, not bumps into her. Runs directly through her body like she's made of wet paper. Huey is left standing on the sidewalk holding her hands. Just her hands. The rest of her is gone. And A-Train's response? He's annoyed. Worried about the PR fallout, not the human one. But the addiction doesn't stop there. When his girlfriend Popclaw starts talking to the boys about his Compound V use, A-Train doesn't sit her down for a conversation. He murders her, injects her with a fatal overdose of heroin, and watches her die, because protecting his secret is more important than the life of someone who loved him, which is, not ideal. Now here's where the irony gets genuinely cruel. The chemical that makes him the fastest man alive is destroying the one organ he needs to stay that way, his heart. Years of Compound V abuse have caused severe cardiac damage, and by season 3, doctors are telling him point blank that running at full speed could trigger a fatal heart attack. For a speedster, whose entire identity and self-worth are built around being fast, that's an existential death sentence delivered before the physical one. So what does he do? He hides it. Obviously. Because admitting his heart is failing, it means admitting the V destroyed him, which means losing his spot on the 7, which means becoming nobody. The man whose superpower is movement has been told that movement will kill him and he'd rather risk dying than risk being forgotten. That's not just addiction, that's the entire Vought machine working exactly as designed. And then Blue Hawk enters the picture. Blue Hawk is a racist Supian who brutalizes black communities under the guise of crime prevention. When he attacks a gathering that A-Train's brother is attending, he leaves A-Train's brother paralyzed. This is the moment where years of cowardice and self-preservation finally crack. A-Train uses whatever speed he has left to grab Blue Hawk and drag him across asphalt at superhuman velocity until there's nothing left but a red smear and a torso. It's brutal, it's cathartic, and it nearly kills A-Train in the process. He survives because he receives a heart transplant. And the donor, almost certainly Blue Hawk himself, the racist murderer who paralyzed his brother, is now literally keeping him alive. Every beat of his new heart is a reminder that his survival is stitched together from violence, addiction, and moral compromise. He can't even have a redemption arc without it being contaminated by the circumstances that made it possible. That's the A-Train cycle in a nutshell. He dopes to stay fast. The doping kills an innocent woman. He murders his girlfriend to hide the doping. The doping destroys his heart. He kills a racist to avenge his brother. The racist's heart saves his life. Every single choice loops back into the next disaster, and every attempt to do the right thing is permanently stained by everything he did before it. But if A-Train's secrets are about what he's done to himself, the next member of the 7 has secrets about what's been done to her, and trust me, it's just as ugly. Starlight. Annie January believed her powers were a gift from God. Not in a casual, oh, I guess I'm blessed kind of way. She genuinely structurally built her entire identity around the idea that a higher power chose her, and Vought was more than happy to let her keep believing that. They didn't just tolerate her faith, they monetized it. The Believe Expo is the perfect example. Vought literally organized a faith-based convention where Supis were positioned as spiritual leaders, living proof that God had a plan. Annie stood on those stages radiating sincerity while Vought sold merchandise in the lobby. She was their poster child for powers as proof of God, and she had zero idea that the entire theological framework she was operating under was a corporate marketing strategy built on a lie her own mother helped create. Here's the thing, Annie's powers didn't come from God, they came from a needle. Her mother, Donna January, permitted Vought scientists to inject her daughter with Compound V when Annie was still a young child. And let's talk about what Compound V actually is. This isn't some benign vitamin supplement. Compound V is a light navy blue mutagenic serum originally developed by Frederick Vought, a German geneticist working during World War II. He created it to make Nazi super soldiers. That's the origin. That's what's running through Starlight's veins. A substance designed by a Nazi scientist to build weapons for the Third Reich, repurposed by America, and eventually turned into Vought International's most profitable product. And the powers it grants? Completely random. Zero predictability. You might get super strength. You might get the ability to shoot light from your hands. You might just die. Donna January looked at those odds, looked at her daughter, and said yes. Then she cashed the check, because she was compensated financially for offering up her child as a test subject. But wait, it gets worse. Donna didn't just allow the injection and move on, she built an entire childhood around the lie. Every moment she encouraged Annie's abilities, every time she celebrated her daughter's gift, every bedtime prayer thanking God for making Annie special was a deliberate performance. She knew the whole time that Annie's powers came from a syringe in a lab, not a blessing from heaven, and she chose to construct a false reality around her daughter rather than tell the truth. That's not an omission. That's architecture. She built a religion around the results of a pharmaceutical experiment and let her daughter live inside it for years. The revelation hits near the end of Season 1, and it's framed not as some grand conspiracy takedown, but as a deeply personal betrayal. This isn't Annie discovering that Vought is corrupt. She already knew that by this point. This is Annie discovering that her own mother sold her body to a corporation, lied about it for her entire life, and dressed the whole thing up in scripture. The villain here isn't a shadowy CEO or a rogue soupy. It's the woman who raised her, and the fallout is devastating because it doesn't just destroy one part of Annie's identity. It destroys two simultaneously. Her religious identity and her superhero identity collapse at the exact same time. If her powers aren't from God, then the theological framework she used to justify her career, her tolerance of suffering, her belief that she was put on this earth for a reason, all of it crumbles. She can't be a divinely chosen hero if she's actually a lab experiment. Think about what that means practically. Every time Annie endured something awful inside 7, every time she swallowed her disgust and kept going because she believed God had placed her there for a purpose, she was operating on a lie. Her faith wasn't just comfort, it was her coping mechanism. And her mother handed her that coping mechanism, knowing full well it was built on nothing. The Believe Expo becomes the ultimate insult when you understand all of this. Vought took the lie that Donna helped create, scaled it up to a convention center, and turned it into a revenue stream. Annie's mother sold her daughter to a pharmaceutical experiment. Vought sold tickets to the performance that grew out of it. Everyone profited except the girl who actually had the needle in her arm. Most secrets in this show involve corporations betraying people, or SUPC betraying each other, or systems failing the individuals trapped inside them. Starlight's secret hits differently because the betrayal starts at home. It starts with a mother who looked at a vial of blue liquid invented by a Nazi scientist and decided her daughter's body was worth the asking price. But if a parent's betrayal is hard to stomach, wait until you see what happens when the person hiding powers is the one writing the laws. Victoria Newman. Every character we've talked about so far is hiding something from the world, but Victoria Newman is hiding something from the people who think they're fighting the world, and that distinction is what makes her the most dangerous person on this entire list. When Newman shows up in Season 2, she looks like the answer. A human politician with zero superpowers standing in front of Congress, pointing her finger directly at Vought and demanding accountability. She runs hearings. She subpoenas executives. She positions herself as the one person in Washington willing to say out loud what everyone already knows, that SUPs are out of control and the corporation behind them needs to be dismantled, then heads start exploding. The Season 2 courtroom massacre is one of the most visceral scenes in the entire show. Witnesses, officials, anyone who could deliver testimony against Vought, their skulls just detonate mid-sentence. No warning, no visible attacker, just a room full of people turning into modern art. The show frames it as a mystery, maybe a hidden SUPA operative working for Vought from the shadows. Here's where it gets dark. The Season 2 finale reveals that Victoria Newman, the reform candidate, the human hope, the woman literally leading the fight against SUP corruption, is the one popping heads. She has psychokinetic blood manipulation abilities that let her rupture a person from the inside out, usually starting with the skull. The very hearings she organized? She was the kill switch built into them, but the real gut punch isn't that she has powers, it's who told her to use them. Stan Edgar, Vought's CEO, greenlit the entire courtroom massacre, which means the reform movement was never real. Edgar took a soupe with lethal abilities, dressed her up in a pantsuit, gave her a podium, and let her become the face of change while she quietly eliminated anyone who threatened the status quo. Every congressional hearing, every impassioned speech, every viral moment of Newman standing up to power was controlled opposition from day one. Vought didn't just survive the reform movement, they designed it, and Newman keeps the act going. Even after Huey discovers her soup status in Season 3, she continues to pretend she's an ordinary human to the broader public. She sits in meetings, she shakes hands, she talks about protecting families. The whole time, she's one bad mood away from turning someone's brain into a Jackson Pollock painting, which is, not ideal for democracy. Huey's realization is one of the most crushing moments in the series. He genuinely believed in her. He worked alongside her, thinking he'd finally found an ally who could fight Vought through legitimate channels. Then he discovers his ally has superpowers, a direct line to the CEO, and a body count that includes the people she publicly claimed to be fighting for, but Season 4 takes it further. Because Newman isn't just hiding her own powers, she's building a dynasty. In Department of Dirty Tricks, the boys infiltrate Newman's room expecting to find documents or leverage. Instead, they find her daughter, who is also a SUIP, who attacks them violently enough to rip Kimiko's arm clean off. This is not a child who accidentally has abilities. This is a child raised in the shadow of a superpowered political operative, fully capable of defending the family's secrets with lethal force. Newman's entire family-oriented political image is fabricated top to bottom. She's not protecting her daughter from soups, she's raising the next generation of them, and that's what makes Newman the perfect final entry on this list. She represents the thesis of the entire show distilled into one person. Every institution in The Boys that claims to fight power is already captured by it. The reformers are soupes, the oversight is theater, the hearings are kill boxes. Look at every secret we've covered today. Starlight's powers were engineered by a corporation that sold them as miracles. Homelander's heroism hides a lab-raised weapon with the emotional depth of a hand grenade. A-Train's speed is killing him, and he can't stop because his identity depends on it. Maeve's sexuality got repackaged into a marketing campaign. Butcher's entire crusade was built on a lie about his own family, and Newman, the person who was supposed to hold all of it accountable, was working for the other side the entire time. Not all stories have a moral. Sometimes the system is just that broken, and the people promising to fix it are the ones making sure it stays that way. That's extraordinarily easy to do when you can pop someone's head like a grape. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.